Just to be safe, I'm recording this on my own in case the stream isn't working for whatever reason. Anyway, I just want to say thank you, everyone, all of you, for helping me reach 1,000 subscribers on YouTube. I'm really thankful for this. I did not think this was going to happen for years. Really, just thank you so much for it. And to commemorate it, today I'm doing the wall track breakdown on the song that helped me get to this milestone, Thea of Sieves. Before I do that, though, I've gotten more than one implication, if not downright accusation, of subbotting on YouTube as a result of this fast growth. And I'm going to be honest. At first glance, I can't really blame people for thinking. I can't really blame anyone for looking at me getting, like, it took me, what, like, a week, maybe a tad less, to jump up like 750 subscribers. Yes, I will recognize that does look sus. So today I'd like to open by proving exactly what I did here. Demonstrate that any botting that may have happened, not intentional whatsoever. And not by any third parties either. So I'm going to hide my screen with FL now. And pull up my YouTube channel, right? You should all be able to see this. And here we have in question all of my recent numbers. Thea of Sieves, 34,000 views. Aeon Remastered Preview, 298 views. And then, by comparison, there is nothing comes close to it. Yep. Stars, like, just first glance, yes. That's gonna raise eyebrows, I know. But let me show you what I did. And a lot of you who found my channel this way, if any of you are watching, you already know what I'm about to say. But to the number of you who don't, let me demonstrate. So I'm going to go into YouTube Studio for you all. Go to my content. And we're going to go to the Promotions Beta tab here. I don't know how many of you know about this tab or have access to it. I don't know if there's any like special requirement that I've met that maybe some of you haven't. But in any case, you'll see here I have a promotion for Thea of Sieves active. To date, has cost me $86.61. And the amount of impressions I've gone over it, well over 500,000. Majority of the views I've gotten on the song came from this promotion, as have the majority of my subscribers thus far. I'm going to go and details. You can see total budget, end date, which is very soon. You see all of that. simplified version of this is there's no third-party sub-botting going on. To be frank with you, if there was, I could have gotten these numbers for less money. What this is me paying Google for ad space. Am I suggesting you all should do this? No, I'm not. Because yes, the number of views and subscribers would suggest, yes, massive turnout, but what you really want going forward is lots of audience engagement. You want the comments and such. And not like comment bots or spam bots just dropping certain like links that very likely contain viruses. No, legitimate comments about your work. You get those, you can decide whether or not this is actually worth it. And maybe it will be, maybe it won't be. You go to Thea of Sieves, though, and you'll see so far not a lot of comments. Just 5 comments. And like I alluded to before, one sub-bot notification comments right there. With 2 likes to it as well, presumably not just poster. So clearly they're not alone. And again, I can't really fault them. But right now, I would say this was perhaps not worth it. So probably do not expect me to do this kind of promotion again in the future. But at the very least, I hope with what I've shown on screen here, you can all see this was done completely legitimately. Maybe maybe a lot of these views and subscribers are bots. And maybe a lot of them are going to be dead subs as well. Dead subs would quite frankly be nothing new for my channel at this point. that first sub-bot comment was there before I started this promotion, for frick's sake. But there's no intentionally illegitimate means by which I got these. Above all, what I paid for is the promotions. What accounts clicked on these promotions, what they did beyond that, that is out of my control. With that established, getting back now to our main course, if you will. Hi, Hero Creeper. Glad that A, the stream is working, but B, that you joined the stream. Right, so getting to our main course. Track breakdown. So here I have the FL Studio project file for Thea of Sieves pulled up here. You can see plenty of track usage. Don't mind these automations. By and large, this is just for the visualizer. Anyway, so I'm going to go through the elements of this track from beginning to end, right? So you start out with just relatively simple bass line. It's pretty much just one note with pretty simple rhythm throughout the first 8 measures, right? And you have 3 layers to this. You have the sub-bass layer, which should be pretty quiet for you here. Then you have a higher bass layer up here. And then a layer down here in the middle. Right. So pretty simple. Together they sound like this. And on measure 8, I cut out the sub layer, just have these two, and I changed notes to a B as opposed to the E that's playing throughout these first 8 measures, right? Next up, we have the kick to the section. We have our rides. And we have our horn stab. We also have a pad, and this has a few automations to go with it. Here, though none of these automations are actively present during the intro. Here, we'll get to those later. And in this pad, you have 3 layers. Altogether, that is going to sound like. Thank you, Flare the Red Foxo, for following. Good to see you in the stream. Anyway, so you see, but pretty simple chord progression there by and large, though it's not following just the simple E that's playing in bass. But still, just a bunch of power chords playing in the intro pad. Next up, we have the plucks. And these are, at least by standards of my composition, a bit unorthodox. So I have this first pluck, which I would say is probably the most prominent in the intro. Paired with this, and then you're going to get a third pluck to transition out of the intro. So all these plucks together. And you'll notice in measure 8, I'm not playing E natural. Sorry, D natural. What I'm playing here is D sharp. which paired with the B and the bass earlier, and with that B power chord in the pad, gives us a B major chord. Now, this is not within the song's main scale of E minor. I'm pulling from the harmonic in this case. This is not a revolutionary technique by any means, but it's one I do use prominently in this track, using B major as opposed to the B minor that's supposed to be in this scale. More than anything, I just think that sounds cool. But again, it's nothing revolutionary. But pulling out the harmonic like that, it is something that I do really like to hear used in B minor scales. Moving on from the plucks, we just have a pretty simple snare here. Pretty subtle. You might not even notice it's that particularly strong in the intro as a whole. Then we have here a string section. You have a viola, double bass, and a cello. Playing each of those individually, starting with the cello. And this is just doubling what the bass is playing. Again, that's pretty standard practice for strings. And then the viola just playing E power chord before in measures 5 to 8, it's raising the higher E up by a major second. Just makes for a little variation, right? And then down here, you have a few soundscape layers, which sound as follows. Second layer. It's kind of similar to the first a little bit. And then a little bit of and then the last layer is kind of like invoking sort of like ocean ambience thing, fitting to a the whole pirate theme to this track, which is also why I'm just using triplets during this track. Can't get all those triplets together. Strings, plucky melody, all that really goes toward developing that kind of like pirate feel, if you will. And the key of choice here is not necessarily going for that. This was just me doing something different. If you want really like pirate feel to your track, I would recommend D minor instead of E minor like I've used here. Anyway, so as we move further into intro, we get these claps. And that is going to be our main clap for the duration of the song. We then have a reverse snare up here, which is supposed to go with the other snare I pointed out previously. And those are working in tandem with these various perks. Simple sort of fill to close out the intro. And that is paired with a crash and reverse crash. White noise. Okay. And then at the start of measure 9, just a single impact. Altogether, the intro sounds like this. So now as we move into I guess you could call it a breakdown section. This next 4 measures, just sub bass by itself. Setting up for some shorter chords than before. Those shorter chords, however, are no longer just the power chords. They all sound as follows. I also have a simple little pluck melody in those 4 measures. And that may sound kind of incomplete on its own, but don't worry, we will get to that. In the meantime, we have these strings playing their own chords. Again, same chords as the pad, whatnot. The soundscape is still going here, as it is throughout basically the entire song. But then we transition into the next 4 measures after that, which is where we introduce the lead. So our lead layer, it's just 2 leads here, played individually. By this point, you are hopefully picking up on the pretty strong Big Room House inspiration here. I didn't intend for this track to be Big Room House explicitly, but again, it is very much inspired by Big Room. So that lead is joined by these chord stabs here. And by additions to the bass. Do that if the rides come back in. These background claps. And then some pretty familiar fills. Yeah. Again, we have the B major coming in here as well. With that, again, the harmonic. Why do I keep using B major to bring in the harmonic? Generally speaking, when you're playing in a minor scale, the chord that's typically used to bring that in is the fifth chord. So, again, you're working E minor, your fifth would be the B chord. You're working A minor, that would be E. Right? The 5 is just the most convenient to do it for a number of reasons. Starting with, typically the 5 is the chord that you would end a major chord progression on anyway. It creates this sort of tension that resolves to the one chord. You're at the end of most sections here. And using the major there kind of helps add to that tension a bit, because you're using something that like kind of feels out of place in a way, but in a still like satisfactory way. Right. So then we go to the build-up. And we fade in our main lead now, which, again, not doing anything crazy here. It's mostly just the same two notes here, with the exception of this singular G. But why these two? The E, of course, that's no surprise. Again, it's the root of the scale. Right? But why the F sharp? The F sharp is the major second of the scale, and F sharp, being the major second, is the most compatible note in the E minor scale for any other note or chord in that scale. This fact, which again holds true for the major and minor scales because they all have a major second, is why a lot of like pop music, the vocal melodies are pretty much like 99% of the time they're singing on the major second of the scale. So the lead layers here individually, there will be another layer that comes in at the drop. But here you have layer 2. And then layer 3. A bit more of a hardstyle-ish layer there. Now you may notice like some kind of changes to the volume as this is playing, right? It sounds like there's a sidechain plugin going on. And technically speaking, there is. I have a Fruity Love filter here with a modified version of of this preset here. And in what I did here, I was like kind of trying to emulate the sidechain shape you see usually used in the Kickstart plugin that like basically all the pros use. Yeah, so basically consider my usage of that basically budget Kickstart. And this is going to go from not being active at the start of the build-up, but slowly going to fade in, and then at the last measure, it's going to go out. Now, why did I do this when there is not a kick playing? I just plain simply like the sound of it. That's really all I could say there. Additionally, though, you have all of these automations working for the lead, right? You have a pitch bend on those layers. You have a stereo width automation for 2 of the 3. You have low pass and high pass filters. You have that budget kickstart or at a mix level. And then you have a slight volume automation. Now, for those of you who may not have seen my process in the past, why do I have these volume and stereo automations? This is for purposes of creating a sort of auditory illusion, right? The drop is supposed to be louder than the build-up, right? In theory. That's not necessarily what I did here. It is louder, don't get me wrong, but not as loud as it sounds. By dropping out 3 decibels of the volume, thinning out the stereo to that lead, and also removing some of the low frequencies, though at the same time I am adding in the high frequencies to balance out. The build-up is going to sound quieter as it goes along. And then it comes back in full force when the drop hits. So it sounds a lot louder than it actually is. As for these pitch automations, that is just adding a bit more variation to melody, so it's not actually just like it doesn't actually sound just like those same 2 notes playing throughout. So playing all these together, you have this sound. Let me just fix that. And then we just have this short little fade in of the lead for the drop. So that is our lead. The bass. Next up. Pretty constant rhythm there, and all on the same note as well. And as for rhythm, not gonna lie, I was taking a bit of inspiration from F777. If I just tweak this just a tad bit, Gonna raise this up temporarily. Drop these down. And then raise that back up slightly. We get this. What I have just recreated for you there is the baseline 2 part of Deadlocked by F777. I was not keeping the same notes, but I kept the same rhythm to it. So, subtle bit of inspiration here that you probably won't guess unless you're listening really closely. As the bass in the build-up goes up, I have a high pass. Yes, kind of filtering out the lows. Next up, we have our various build-up percussion. And this one I actually made the build-up myself instead of doing one of the pre-made Cymax samples. For one, Cymax doesn't really have build-up samples or whatever that are that good unless you're working in something where triplets are a bit more common. You know, a lot of their stuff is geared towards like hip-hop, trap, dubstep. That's where you're gonna find a lot of their samples using the triplets. And to be honest, that's just a lot of what Cymax in general is geared towards with samples these days. If you're looking for more house-appropriate samples, like what could have been used here, maybe look for Kashmir samples, but unfortunately, yeah, don't throw around my money as easily outside of that one promotion, which I figured would be a return on investment. So, instead, I've been using primarily Cymatic samples, and it works. You can get loads of them without handing Cymax a single cent. Not intentionally designed that way, but Cymax runs so many promotional offers throughout the year that you can get yourself thousands, if not tens of thousands, of samples from Cymatics, and you never need to fork over a single cent of your actual money. Money talk aside, this is how all that percussion in the build-up is going to sound together. As you notice, I have the snares being pitched up over the course of the build-up. Right. Now, looking at our various effects, you have our white noise, our impacts, the brass stabs, and we have our riser. Now, the strings in this section are not supporting with the chords this time. We are just playing a chord with the pad, and that chord weird as this may sound at first, is actually a minor chord. So why am I playing a 4 chord instead of the 1 or the 5? The idea here is further add to that tension. We ended the previous measure before the build on a chord that, like, it carries tension itself. It feels a need to resolve. But then we just simply don't resolve that. Just when we start the build up. We just simply don't resolve that. We keep adding to that tension. Give more of that energy to build up. And then we have to pay off when we hit the drop. All the while here we have a stereo with automation, closing that up a bit. Again, adding to making the drop not feel bigger than it actually is. Altogether, the elements of the build-up sound like this. Right, so that is our build-up, and now we go into the drop. We now have our lead in all of its glory. And if I do say so myself, I would say that's a lot of glory. Layers individually. Before I do that, let me just make sure everything. Okay. Sounds a bit funky right now, but I guess I should probably play this with all the automations active here, so you can hear it properly. Yeah, it kind of responds weird like that when you mess with pitch automations there. It's annoying if I'm being honest, but it is what it is. So playing it this way, you're gonna hear all the pitch automations with it. Pitch automations just give it a bit more flavor, right? So that's one layer. Next layer. Third. And then we have our backing layer to the lead coming in for the first time. All together. Next up, down here, we are going to have those chord stabs again. Which sound as follows. add a little more power to that lead ball, simultaneously kind of having a sort of like counter melody to it. I usually don't do that when it comes to my chord stabs, but I'd say it worked out quite well here. Next up, we have our base layers. And they, like the lead, are going to get some pitch animations here. It's a lot more subtle in the bass than it is with the lead. Then we get our drop drums. And again, pretty big room E. Pretty much the only thing that's missing is that sort of 808 tail that a lot of the big room house kicks use. Note to self, actually keep those active before you start playing. Pretty strong percussion to that, relatively speaking. Here you get a closed pattern that I put together myself, which sounds as follows. Then the effects I have going on. Again, more of the same by and large. The second half of the drop, we're going to get those risers coming back in to support that. And here we actually don't have any pads or strings. You know, we let those synth stabs kind of do all the talking for the chords, right? Again, your soundscape should still be active up until this point. Again, that's going to go for like basically the entire song, right? So altogether, this is how the drop sounds. Again, you're going to have some high-pass automations on most aspects. Your main idea to that being give this fill a bit more room to shine. Again, it's a pretty simple fill, nothing crazy. Just pull something with perks I threw together on my own. Right. So as we leave drop 1 and go into the bridge, thank you, King of Street Hustlers. I appreciate the compliment. So we go into the bridge. Starts off pretty simple. Again, you just get the fade out of the effects from the end of the drop. We have our pad come back in. Just one layer for now. We also have the plugs from earlier coming in. And here, very subtle Brian Tyler inspiration here in these last two measures. Next up, we have the strings also coming back in with the pad. And this time, unlike the pad, I have all the layers active here. We then get into the second half. Of the bridge, and we get that lead coming back with a tad different flavor to it this time, if you will. Mostly the same as before the first build-up, just with a bit more rhythm added to it. This time, though, I end on the B instead of the D sharp. Again, add more variation to it. That is not to say that the harmonic is not getting used this time around, though. Case in point with the strings. The pads, similar story. Right? We get our bass coming back in. Again, also a tweaked rhythm to it. Chord stabs, similar story. Again, mostly the same percussion-wise as the earlier section. I can't really pinpoint any notable differences. Altogether, that bridge is going to sound as follows. Right, so that is the bridge section. Thank you, King of Street Hustlers, for following. And to answer your question, yes, that is in fact a reference to Sea of Thieves. As a matter of fact, if I redisplay just general desktop underneath the FL Studio screen, you'll see there is, in fact, down here, you look right next to Minecraft's icon. You do, in fact, have Sea of Thieves there. I do play that on occasion. This kind of an anagram to it, though. Never really played but always wanted. I would recommend it. It can be a bit grindy at times, but if you're playing with friends, it's awesome. That a very slight anagram on the title is actually not just a reference to Sea of Thieves, but also to a different song. For all of the Big Room listeners, here once again, the Big Room house inspiration coming through on this track. It's a Big Room track that my brother actually is surprisingly a fan of. He usually doesn't listen to much EDM, but this is one of the exceptions here. Song by W&W featuring Modi, Spac Jero. I don't think I need to explain that. But kind of have a bit of inspiration from that. You know, but both pirate-themed, big roomy tracks. The inspiration from that one, you can definitely tell. Though, on the note of Pirates of the Caribbean, you're going to see a bit more inspiration from that one when you get to drop 2. But in the meantime, we have the build-up for the second time around, but most of this is still the same from the first build-up. The biggest difference is in the percussion. If I may show you what I mean. So, in our first build-up, the percussion sounded as follows. And the second half this time around is going to pretty much remain the same, but the first half is mixed up a bit. Again, but by and large, the rest of it is still pretty much the same as the first time around. Altogether, that is going to sound like this. Right, so that is our second build-up. Which I also don't really listen to EDM. I don't know how I ended it, but that song is good. No, it's already out if you want to listen to the full thing. You can check my YouTube, Spotify, etc. It's all there. But I will be playing the full thing in its entirety at the end of the stream regardless. So now we're in the second drop to this track. Starting off, we have our lead, which is playing a different melody this time around. It's perhaps a bit simpler from the melodic perspective, for the most part, but a tad more rhythmic, I would argue. And it's on the 4 of each measure that you get more of that Pirates of the Caribbean inspiration. Sorry, the fourth measure, I meant to say. I admittedly don't remember the exact notes used in that particular section for Pirates of the Caribbean. And, he's a pirate, the main theme for the first movie. But it was similar to that. I didn't know that as much. Going into the next 2 measures, we have a bit more of a variation on the first 4 measures. And then going into the second half of the drop, we vary on a bit further. Again, measures 1 to 4 and measures 9 to 12 are pretty much the same, but get to 13 to 16, mix it up a tad bit here. Right, so that is our lead. The chord stabs, not as much of a counter melody, but still have some elements of it. Once again, we have that harmonic coming back in. Go now. So yeah, good. Right, thank you for tuning in. Hope to maybe see you in a future stream, Chemistry Hustlers. Right. So then we have our bass here, and again, not really doing anything crazy in my opinion. Let me just, yeah, let me get that last automation activated, make sure everything works out fine. Okay. Moving on to the drums again, it's pretty much same scenario as earlier. And there's the effects. Again, nothing new really. And as usual, still the soundscape present. And this is how that second drop is going to sound all together. And now we just have our outro. The drums here are, again, pretty simple. Effects, again, nothing really new. Now the strings coming back in for the end. And pretty much retreading familiar ground still. It's a pad doing the same thing. Right? I have two instances of the strings. How did I not notice that? Well, guess not a completely flawless project. In any case, moving on, the bass again, same as the intro, really. Things get a bit different is reintroducing the pluck with some new melodic elements to it. but still with some familiar flavors there. Right, and all together. Right, and that is the track for you. So as far as effects, again, I really don't do anything crazy here. It's just EQ, limiting. I have these reverb buses, volume automations, get low pass and high pass through this EQ here. I don't do anything particularly crazy. You also get the stereo width automations through here. And then as for the master, right? I've had better masters than this, not gonna lie. But again, very simple, just some limiting, a very slight bit of lows and highs, boost volume a bit. There are better ways to master than what I've done here, but at the time that I made this track, I still honestly had yet to learn those methods. After I finish playing through this all, I can show you what I would do for mastering instead. A completely brand new project file. Or alternatively, I could just try to do it here. Though, of course, that's not changing anything about what's been officially released. So, the full song all together. how would I redo the mastering? Sorry, I realized I mic off during those last few minutes. So, right, how how I would redo the master. So for starters, pull this up, turn off everything else I did. For the most part, that looks alright. I might make slight tweaking to it though. But before I do that, to again similarly cut out a bunch of the lowest lows and highest highs. Just not really necessary if you're playing on speakers for like live events. Just give a little boost in the sound there, just slight, not even 2 decibels. You usually don't want to go over that when doing this, from what I've been told. If you do need to go over it, you should probably go back and add the mix instead. Next, I'd throw on some patcher. And this is, the purpose of this is to clean up the sides of the mix a bit. So here, by doing this, we get separate EQs for the mid mix stereo-wise, and then the side parts. So notice when I remove the side, it sounds like this. That's essentially how it sounds in mono. But here we are going to remove the mid. It's the sides that we want. And we're just going to high pass, not band pass, out. Until the point where you start kind of losing power. You don't want to cross that point. Just get right to the edge of it. Sounds about good to me. It's not going to sound totally apparent at first what I've done. But it is cleaner. Slightly, but it's. Then we go into Maximus. And this is not just going to serve as a limiter, but a number of other things as well. We're going to go into each band separately and compress accordingly. Also going to drop the attack a bit. Give it a bit more prominence. And we're going to merge it a bit. The idea there is limit the dynamics of the low end. Most professional mixes will not have a crazy amount of dynamics to the low end. Now we're just going to raise back up just slightly below where it was before. Going to the mid. You don't need to tighten the merging any bit here, I would say. Sometimes you actually want to increase the width. By increasing the attack, that helps out the cord stabs a tad bit. Again, we're gonna raise this back up a bit now. And then the highs. Just tame that a tad bit. Here you want to widen that tad bit. Raise this back up. Just slight saturation. Drop the ceiling to about -1 decibel. This is best if you're going for exporting as MP3. If you're going for wave, go for like -0.03. Sorry, -0.3 decibels. Now we just raise up the post a bit until we start getting audible distortion, at which point just drop it back down to 1 to 3 decibels. Bit higher, and then just add another decibel back to make up for that ceiling. So now it sounds like this. As compared to beforehand, it sounded like this. Oh, I forgot to show that back on. Before those changes, it sounded like this. Gives us a much louder mix and just generally better. I've used that mastering method on projects I've made since this, but this song's not released with the revised mastering I just demonstrated. In any case, hope you enjoyed. Maybe you learned something that you could use here. And hope to see you all next time.